Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here with us today to talk about next generation data catalogs. My name is Wayne Eckerson. I'm president of Eckerson Group. We're a boutique consulting firm specializing in data and analytics, helping organizations get more value from their data. These are some of our more recent consulting clients. If you have a need for data strategy, data governance strategy, self-service help, modernizing your data architecture, just give us a call or drop me a note. Be happy to chat. Today I'm joined by Lyndsay Wise, longtime industry analyst in our space, who's now the actual practitioner in our space. She's the data governance lead at the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada. I was very happy that she was working with me on doing the research for this project, and with her practical bent at the Royal College, it was really great to have her perspective on these products that we looked at. Let's get going. I will say that Lyndsay and I worked most of the past 12 months on this project. We went deep onto 5 products that are up and coming in the data catalog space. We think they all share a certain number of characteristics, which is why we're calling them next generation data catalogs. Faster, better, cheaper. So just some background to set the stage in case you're not overly familiar with data catalogs. Until recently, if you were in the data and analytics space running a data analytics shop, your platform consisted of basically a stool of 3 pillars: a data platform, an ETL or ELT tool to do the data movement and transformation, and a BI tool to do the visualization and analysis. But now what we're seeing among our clients is that there's a 4th leg. So it's now a chair, no longer a stool. And that 4th leg is data catalog. And that serves a multitude of purposes, which we'll go through here. But it's essentially a metadata repository. So everything that you're doing in the other 3 pillars will show up in the data catalog, giving people line of sight visibility to everything in the data environment. Yeah, so that's basically the definition. As you can see here on the left, data catalog kind of sits in the middle of all of your data sources that contain your data assets, including your data warehouse. Your data lake would be a data source here. And it's a centralized repository of information about data assets, including data sets, queries, models, files, reports, and I probably should have put here data products. Although if you followed us in the past, you know that we love when you put your data products in a data marketplace, which is a specialty data repository really geared to shopping for products. But the catalog is becoming that 4th leg of a data environment because it serves a multitude of purposes. Let me just quickly go through these. 1, it helps business users discover and evaluate data assets for analysis and decision making. And this really was the initial use case for data catalogs when they first came onto the market. But it's got many other use cases, and I think 8 total here. So it helps data stewards govern data assets to ensure quality, reliability, and trust. Become very central to data governance operations in most organizations. 3rd, it helps developers build data-driven applications by making it easy for them to find and evaluate data objects, just like business users find and evaluate those objects for decision-making. It helps data engineers troubleshoot data issues by evaluating data lineage and dependency. So if they change something, what's it going to impact? If the data source changes, what's it going to impact downstream? Very useful for that. A lot of these tools now have very sophisticated data lineage capabilities. 5th, it helps data architects migrate data systems because they can easily identify and evaluate data objects and their interdependencies, so they know what to move and what has to go with it, right, when they're migrating systems. 6, it helps data leaders better manage data storage and processing costs. Some of these catalogs actually do or support what we call FinOps, keeping track of usage and queries on Snowflake and Databricks and other leading data platforms. And then finally, I guess seventh and the last year, it helps data governance managers comply with industry regulations regarding sensitive data. In fact, a lot of these tools now do a really good job of identifying, at least in the metadata, what's PII data, among other things. So I'm going to stop there. That's our context about, what a data catalog is and how it fits into your data environment. So let me turn to Lyndsay. Do you have any comments to share? Anything to add?
No, I think that's really comprehensive. And as we were going through this list and doing this work, I would always put it in the context of what I'm working on at my current organization as a practitioner. And all of these things really align. And one of the things that it's actually done for us, which has been amazing, is that in general, in several organizations, the data engineers or IT, focused employees are on one side, and then the data stewards or more business users are on the other. Whereas a lot of what a data catalog can also do, because it applies business context, is kind of merge the two by creating a system that really meets everybody's needs when it comes into data asset visibility and evaluating whether it's cost or governing needs, and especially when it comes to sensitive PII related data across the organization.
Yeah, that's the ultimate, when you can serve all these different users, especially on the business side and the technical side at once with one tool set. That's a home run. If anyone has comments or questions, please add them in, and we will stop as we just did, and we'll look at the Q&A tab and see if there are any comments and bring you into the conversation. But since there are none right now, we'll keep moving on, trying to anyway. Oh, my little clicker's no longer working. So we'll go manual here. There we go. Okay, so we just talked about data catalogs in general, and this webinar is really about next generation data catalogs. So this is a category or a subcategory in this space that we've defined here at Eckerson Group. So we better define what that means, at least in context of what we're calling traditional data catalogs like Informatica, Alation, Calibra, Microsoft Purview. Those were kind of the first to the market, whereas this next generation is a lot of different tools, but we looked at 5 in particular, the ones that are listed here: CastorDoc, Metaphor, SelectStar, ThinkData, and Zeenea. Now, all these catalogs are evolving very quickly, but this is how they started. So like a traditional data catalog came out, it was run on premises for the most part, whereas next generation data catalogs are all born in the cloud. So they're cloud native. They didn't have to go through an architectural migration to get to the cloud, unlike some of the incumbents. The target users for traditional catalogs, whether they liked it or not, were technical folks. And that has been a little bit of a drag on their adoption. Technical folks used it a lot for troubleshooting and kind of a more glorified data dictionary. Seeing those issues and that they didn't really address the target audience for traditional catalogs, which was the business, and this next generation of catalogs really doubled down on making their interfaces user-friendly for business people who needed it to find and discover data out there for analysis purposes. Traditional catalogs were more enterprise scope, from the get-go for the most part. Next generation catalogs started as departmental or mid-market, but have very quickly evolved into enterprise scale deployments. At least that's what they were insistent upon telling us. And we think from talking to some of their users, it's true. Traditional data catalogs took a long time to deploy, and that's because there's a lot of complex features and functions. The next generation tools were designed to be gotten up and running within a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks. So fast deployments. And one of the bigger differentiations is cost. Typically today costs you $150,000 at least for an enterprise license to a traditional data catalog, where it's a little bit more than half of that for next generation data catalogs. And we've heard some stories on the traditional side of low user adoption, often because of the technical bent of the tools. And the next generation tools typically have very high adoption rates among business users. So that's the general difference. But as I said, both categories of tools are evolving very fast. And I think these differentiations will soon disappear if they are not already fairly obscure. So one question here from one of our audience: would it be possible to define interrelationships between metadata, data catalog, business glossary, data dictionary? Well, that's a good question. Thank you, Dan. Interestingly, business glossaries is kind of a glorified data dictionary designed for business people. At least that's how I've always understood it. And that evolved separately from a data catalog, at least initially. Calibra was the first company that I know of that introduced a business glossary to the market. And then very quickly, those business glossaries kind of joined forces with the data catalog, so they became part of the same platform. And the data catalog really is about indexing metadata, whereas a data warehouse is really all about collecting and storing data, right? So a data catalog doesn't handle data directly, although that's changing too, and we'll talk about that. It's really the card catalog from your library, if we want to extend that metaphor, for all of your enterprise data. So it's a place to go, one place to go, like the card catalog in the library, to go find out anything you want to know about any of the assets in your data environment. So I hope that answers that question, Dan. Lyndsay, any comments on this? Any additional insights?
I think one of the things that is interesting, I fully agree that the market is really growing and changing. So a lot of these differentiations will go away and new ones may emerge. But the interesting thing to me about the next generation data catalogs is really their more focus on data discovery and departmental, to really kind of hone in on business users and identify systemic or like governance needs, and give kind of business users the access to actually look through a business glossary or analyze data or identify data asset ownership automatically, or interrelations and lineage between data in a way that beforehand wouldn't have really been digestible by them. Whereas now it's much more interactive and intuitive for business people. So it takes away that complexity or that kind of distant relationship that a lot of business people used to have with data. It's really enabling them to access data and understand the relationships and the assets in a deeper and more complex way.
Yes, I completely agree, and I do think the traditional vendors have got that in their scope right now, and trying to make their environments much more business user friendly. Okay, another question: how do you view the process of keeping a data catalog up to date, considering the need for an established data governance program with defined roles and responsibilities and alignment on data acquisition and ingestion? Yes, this is the answer to that. A data catalog automates the ingestion of metadata, and a lot of the catalogs now can automatically tag metadata based on certain characteristics of that data, so they can classify, say, PII data or Social Security field, and they'll automatically tag it. So that happens automatically, but that's not enough. And I think you're right, Samira, that you need an established data governance program with defined roles and responsibilities to curate the metadata in the catalog. Because just like in the warehouse, if the metadata is not accurate and high quality and useful, the users are not going to use it or trust it, right? And the more the users use it and actually leave their fingerprints on the metadata, like with certain social features like likes and comments, then the more valuable the data catalog is going to be. So it almost has to reach a tipping point of usage before it becomes valuable, a valuable asset. But that requires stewardship and curation of the metadata, which, if you're not planning for it and you haven't allocated resources for it, it's just not going to happen. And you might find your data catalogs just sitting there with no users. Lyndsay, any thoughts on that?
No, I just wanted to add one thing, because you had mentioned tagging. Is some of the solutions also allow you to create your own tags. So if there are, let's say you're identifying a data asset owner within one department, but there are other departments such as finance that also needs access to certain information, you can tag those so that any social updates, if somebody's making a comment or a change, different people are notified as well. So there's a lot of ways that if you're leveraging these tools, there's a lot of automation, but also input and customization that can then kind of help with automated processes.
Oh, great. Okay. So we have another question from Drake. Do you see more use with business that have spread their own application architecture and businesses that have it all in one ERP? So I guess the question is, do you need a catalog if you've got all of your data in one ERP? And I would say you probably still need a catalog, because I doubt that all of your data will ever be in just one place, one ERP. And those ERPs are not designed for reporting and analysis to begin with. And it may not be easy for people to navigate them, especially if it's something like SAP, right? Or Oracle, which are very complex, multi-module type of environment. So, I think just being able to discover the data is useful. But we talked about all those other use cases too: compliance, governance, stewardship, FinOps and cost analysis. Make it useful for many other reasons besides discovery. To what extent do these next-gen catalogs help organizations with their more core issues, such as people and culture challenges? Well, I'm going to let you answer that one first, Lyndsay.
I'm sure there are many different answers. One of the things that I can speak for personally is that change management, at least in our organization, can be very challenging, and that includes people and culture and new technology adoption. One of the things that these next generation data catalogs really provide, because they're more business focused, it gives business users more ownership over their data and how they're governing and how they're putting these programs in place, so that there's not as much a reliance on IT to put things in place for them, or to manage their data assets, or identify different lineage or PII, etc. And what I found is that it's actually enabled people to take more ownership over the issues and to say, hey, we have this issue with data quality. Instead of going to IT to do all the analysis, let's actually start looking and trying to discover where these issues are coming from. And let's see how we can work together to manage them and increase them over time. So in that sense, I've seen a lot of benefit from these more business-focused data catalogs.
Excellent. All right, let's keep moving on. Oh, yeah, Atlan and Data.World are kind of sitting between these two categories, because they were born in the cloud, but a little bit more a few years before most of these next-gen tools, as we're calling them, came onto the market. So they're kind of, I would call them bridge products, and very popular right now, by the way. Better known than the next generation tools we're talking about. All right, so what are some of the features of a next generation data catalog? Of course, the incumbent traditional catalogs have a lot of these features as well. It's not exclusive, but let's just go through some of them. Cloud native, as we said, born in the cloud, run as multi-tenant SaaS tools. Most of them run on AWS, although there are exceptions. Well, I should say all of them run on AWS. Some of them also run on other platforms, like CastorDoc runs on GCP. ThinkData Works runs on AWS, Azure, and GCP. And some of them also offer private virtual clouds, like Metaphor and ThinkData Works. So if you really want a cordoned off area for your catalog due to sensitivity or regulations, you can get that with some of these tools. Most of these tools have about 50 plus connectors to external sources of data, applications or databases, mostly in the cloud, but most also have some way for you to get data from on-premises systems, like CastorDoc and Zeenea use agents, little software packs that you put on your operational systems. Metaphor uses Python scripts, and ThinkData Works uses a data virtualization tool that queries data directly. A lot of these tools have done a lot to push metadata into other applications. And this is part of their strategy, is to say, it's kind of hard to get users to come to the data catalog, right? So why don't we push the data catalog to them where they're at? So a lot of them have integration with Slack and Teams and BI tools. And some have these really neat Chrome extensions, so that whatever is displayed on your browser, the metadata pops up in a sidebar on the right-hand side, and you can see where that's coming from, who the owner is, when it was refreshed, and you can link to lineage. You can link to take action, like send an alert or make a comment, things like that. Pretty cool. A lot of them have also established integrations with data platforms like dbt and Snowflake, where they can exchange tags and documentation and even access control. So you can manage your security centrally in the catalog and push it out to various platforms that users are using, which is really cool and helpful. Centralize that. And then most now have integrated with data quality tools and data observability tools, and incorporate data quality scores and alerts right into the descriptions of the assets that they're displaying in the tool, to give users a deeper view of the assets that they're evaluating in the catalog. So that's pretty cool. Column level lineage. So users can understand the origins and downstream uses of these assets. Lineage has come a long way, and this is probably one of the key differentiators of some of the newer tools, is that they're getting more granular in what they can capture in the lineage stream, and they're doing it in a way visually that makes it easy for users to digest that information and navigate through the lineage, which can be quite complex. So this takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, and some of them do it within the connector technology itself. So it does pay to examine their connectors, because they're not created equally. Some of those connectors are pulling a lot of information besides what gets displayed in the main body of the data catalog. Most of the next gen tools have adopted Gen AI within the last 12 months in a big way, because Gen AI can simplify the use of a data catalog by supporting natural language queries, by automatically creating labels and descriptions of fields and tables, can summarize conversations that are happening in the comments area. Some are even using it to create definitions within a business glossary, or even generate SQL if the tool supports that capability, to go access data directly. So Gen AI is very fundamental to basically the business orientation of these data catalogs. And so these vendors have jumped on it pretty heavily. Oh, we're kind of out of order here. So classification, we already talked about this. A lot of these tools can automatically tag metadata on ingestion based on the criteria you feed it. or out of the box for PII data. Talked about business glossary, how that's now part of the platform. Role-based access. So in the old days, everyone saw everything in the catalog, but now you can control who sees what in the catalog and who can do what in the catalog. And that makes it very valuable. Some of them also enable you to kind of federate the catalog. So you might have an enterprise catalog, and then that's aligned with domain-based catalogs that borrow and use data that's in the enterprise catalog, but also have domain-specific metadata, and that's very useful for larger, more complex organizations. Collaboration, this is part of the usability and the business centricity of these catalogs. A lot of them are designed like social media tools, so they allow users to share easily, like, comment, or act on things, trying to make it more interactive and more useful. And then finally, reporting is pretty sizable in a lot of these tools to allow users and administrators to analyze usage and other patterns in the data. So those are some of the features that we highlighted in our report, among others. Lyndsay, any thoughts on any of these?
I think it's highlighted in a pretty comprehensive list. I think for me, when we were doing the analysis, it was becoming interesting to see how a lot of the next generation data catalogs were also, third-party integration in terms of reporting for also data quality, and that over time, I was always curious to see if that would become something native to their platforms, but there is like more of that robustness in the reporting and the collaboration side, which is also really interesting to see of those social user interfaces.
Okay, a couple questions have come in. This is from Gabriel. Why are those next generation toolkits classified as departmental? Are they not suited for large enterprises yet? Why? Which are the key reasons? Well, this actually was a little bit of a bone of contention because we did interact quite a bit with the vendors on our evaluation. And, they insisted that they didn't want to be classified as departmental or mid-market products, which is what we had them originally. And they actually convinced us that by showing us actual customer installations that included, thousands of users and hundreds of thousands of assets under management by the catalogs. And most insisted that while they do have a lot of departmental or mid-market customers, that they also have enterprise customers and can support enterprise workloads. So as I said, things are evolving very fast in this space. And these new upstarts designed in the cloud with a business focus to be easy to use and easy to deploy, fast to deploy, really want to get to the next level pretty quickly. And that includes supporting multiple use cases, not just discovery. So they want to be used for governance and compliance, right? And migration and cost optimization. And a lot of them have those features that enable them to do that. And they want to be used in large deployments. So yes, stay tuned. Things are changing fast. Here's a question for you, Lyndsay, from Moni. I don't know if you want to answer this, but wondering what tool is being used at RCP. What was the rationale for using the product?
Yeah, and it's funny because we're in the process of a huge migration off of Oracle. So we were actually using an Oracle tool. So we're in the process of migrating that. So I can't even tell you what the choice is, but we're in the process of an evaluation, which is actually very interesting because a lot of these tools fit a lot of the needs of what we're looking for. So it's more a stay tuned, but I wish I could tell you and give you that rationale, but we definitely wanted to move towards something that was more next gen and suits our needs.
Question from Gabriel. He says, apart from cloud native collaboration and to a small extent Gen AI, the main features have already been present in prior generation data catalogs. Are the old features better implemented in the next gen ones? No, as I said, everything's evolving very fast. Gen AI is new to all the catalogs as of the past 12 months. It's just that next generation tools, which are essentially still startups, they've already implemented next gen AI, and it aligns very closely with their strategy to support business users. Now, we would expect the incumbents to support a lot of these features as well. It's just that they started from a different design point, and I think I've always said that heritage often dictates where you end up, right? So if you start out on premises, you're always going to have vestiges of that on premises architecture, right? Of course, we know in any market and in tech, especially within 5 years or so, 5 to 7 years, all the vendors are kind of in an equivalent place, and they're essentially leapfrogging each other in features and functions. And we're pretty close to that point now in the data catalog space. I think now, within the next year or two, the main difference will just be in the scale and scope of the vendor and its customer base. All right, so we did comparisons. We created our own version of a quadrant chart. This is what we came up with. It's actually got 5 dimensions. I think it's pretty cool from a quadrant chart perspective. So you've got the y-axis is functionality, which we scored based on this 50 criteria that we looked at in all the vendors, and then company scale, which we had criteria as well that we scored in all the vendors that we looked at. We also looked at heritage. Is its heritage discovery, which is what most of the data catalogs started out as, discovery tools, or privacy. There's 1 or 2 that started there. Or is it really a governance tool or a data marketplace? We looked at the size of the customer base, and that corresponds to the size of the shape, right? And then pricing, which is always difficult to get and to compare. We're using color here. But as you can imagine, given that these tools, the mantra is faster, better, cheaper, these were all value-based products, at least for now. As they move into the enterprise, they may bump up their pricing accordingly. So this is what we came up with. They're all pretty much in the emerging player, out of the emerging player sector into the established player sector. You would see most of the incumbents in that upper right quadrant if we listed them here. And these next generation tools started out in the lower left quadrant, and they're making their way up to the upper right. Some focusing more on functionality, some more focusing on customer base, as you can see here. Some a little bit bigger than others in that regard. But they're all pretty small in terms of overall revenue. It's under 7.5 million annual recurring revenue at this point in time, as we'll show you in a little bit. The only real outlier here in terms of heritage is ThinkData Works, which actually started as a data marketplace back in 2014 for open data. It's pivoted, and now it's using a data virtualization tool under the covers to do a lot of its architectural work in gathering metadata. But it also gives it the unique ability to go actually query data and pull in actual data as well into the platform. Now, there were other players that we could have looked at, which are listed here. And for one reason or another, we did not evaluate them. Either they didn't get back to us, or they declined, or some other reason. So we defined 51 criteria for evaluating the data catalogs. And we, unlike maybe some other analyst groups, we didn't just send a big spreadsheet to vendors and have them fill it out. I've been party to that in the past. You never get good responses. You never trust what the responses are anyway. So we decided to just interview the vendors and fill out the spreadsheet ourselves. So it took 3 passes with each vendor to fill out that worksheet and review it with them, fact check it. And then we created a profile based on each, and then we scored two of the 4 sections in the companion worksheet. Which, by the way, if you purchase the report, you get not only the report, which profiles each vendor and provides an overview, you also get this companion worksheet, which was the place where we did our research. And we cleaned it up, so hopefully it's coherent. But it contains the 51 criteria, and you can see what we were looking at when we evaluated each vendor on those criteria. And the quadrant chart was based on company scale, where we aggregated and normalized actual company data to create a score. And product functionality was done subjectively on a scale from 0, they didn't support that functionality, to 4, which was excellent. So that's how we came up with this chart here. As you can see, most of the vendors are kind of clustered together, which I guess makes sense in some ways. So given that they're all pretty much the same age. Yeah, so let's move to that. And then we'll stop and take questions. So as I said, most are startups founded 4 years ago in the year 2000. The only exceptions are Zeenea, which is 2017, ThinkData Works, which is 2014. It kind of has changed its business model since its outset. Most based in the US, although Zeenea and CastorDoc started in France. CastorDoc's now headquartered in Brooklyn. Zeenea is still based in France and is going to be moving to the US later this year or next. ThinkData Works based in Canada. Most have received funding, less than 25 million. CastorDoc, I guess, has received the most, 25.5 million. SelectStar, 20 million. Zeenea was funded by its founder to the tune of 15 million euros. Its founder is a serial entrepreneur, very successful. Most have less than 50 customers, some less than 10, less than 50 employees, less than 7.5 million in ARR. So some of this info, as you'll see in the worksheet, was non-disclosed. So we understood what it was, but we couldn't share it with the public. So you won't get explicit details on all of that. Now let me go one more slide and then we'll stop. All right, so unique features of each of these 5 tools that we looked at, and they're not always exclusive, always unique for each, but close. So CastorDoc has a very nice social interface that kind of mimics some of the social media tools that are out there for sharing and liking, following, and all that, making it easier to use for business users. It's got unlimited viewers for pricing, so you can have as many viewers of the catalog as you want without paying extra. You will pay for admins and curators. It's got a nice KPI map for its glossary, and it can tag metadata by the software provenance. So it knows if the metadata came from, say, a Tableau or Power BI. Metaphor does a great job with Gen AI and uses RAG to make sure that the search results are based on its own metadata and that it's collected for that specific customer, which makes it much more accurate. It can actually put data products, not metadata, but actual data assets on domain pages. So kind of a data marketplace of sorts. Probably more importantly, it has a knowledge graph, which is a great way to do a data catalog, by the way, which facilitates search and makes it really easy for users to find similar items, whether it's people or assets or models or anything like that, based on similarity or connectivity. And then it's got, from a pricing perspective, unlimited connectors and assets that you can use without paying extra. SelectStar has done a lot of good work with lineage. It can be deployed, at least they claim, without their help very quickly. It supports persona-based roles and PII tagging upon ingestion. ThinkData Works, I said, actually can query data with its built-in virtualization tool. It's also got a built-in data quality tool, so you don't have to integrate with a third party. And it was the only vendor that actually offered unlimited user pricing, not just viewer pricing. Zeenea is kind of unique in that it had a relentless focus on simplicity. It's been known to actually take functions and features out of the product to make it simpler to use. Also built on a knowledge graph. And interestingly, you can create subgraphs to correspond with different data domains, but all those graphs are still related, which is important if you're federating your catalog. And it's got a built-in data marketplace, which is very unique among all the vendors. So those are just some of the things that stood out for each of the products. And why don't I stop there and see if there are any questions from anybody else, and comments from you, Lyndsay. Is there any tool that struck you when we were doing the analysis than the others? Any feature that you saw?
I think personally, and because we focus a lot on PII where I work, I liked SelectStar also for the lineage, but I found like CastorDoc, I really like the interface. So I feel like over time, a lot of the differentiators will change and newer capabilities will come out, and it'll be interesting to see which one of these players or maybe some others end up being early adopters. But I definitely found them all really interesting in different ways, if that makes sense. But I think that SelectStar, just because it seemed like it could be a more automated approach to initial implementation, it seemed interesting in that perspective.
That's interesting. We had a question here that said, did any of the tools branch out towards master data management? And I would say no. Right, Lyndsay? We didn't hear any.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. That's from Frank. What is the typical feedback from developers and data engineers? Do these folks look at the use of these tools, yet another burden on the development team, another step in the development process that has minimal benefit to them and their jobs? Well, I think it's actually the contrary, Frank. I think these developers and data engineers benefit immensely from a data catalog because they don't have to go hunt for data anymore. They don't have to do much work to understand the impact of any changes that they're making on downstream systems. So I think it's a huge boon to developers and engineers. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe where the challenges becomes in terms of the implementation and setting everything up and thinking, oh no, now we need more resources and it's another system. But once it's implemented, I think there's immense value. And I think Wayne hit the nail on the head. People don't have to go looking for anything anymore. All the data is there. You can really understand and track lineage, and identify what you need to do if you're adding, let's say, an integration or looking at how the business is leveraging data for their business processes. I think it really adds immense value.
Comment from Gabriel. So at the end of the day, it must be the limited financial strength, hence cap development capacity of these minnows, which scares the really big enterprises. Well, yeah, I mean, that's true for any startup. I mean, that is the major hurdle that any startup has to overcome is to grow quickly enough to get to be of a certain size that their viability is no longer questioned by potential customers, right? So these folks are all moving as fast as they can up those stairs to the enterprise place where they've got really solid customer references that will give confidence to any other potential customer. It's a race for sure. And we're 4 years into it for most of these. So I think the next couple of years will tell whether they survive or not. I hope they do, because it was a lot of fun working with all of them and seeing their energy and enthusiasm and some of the cool new features they're rolling out. So if this obviously is just a summary of what we researched, trying to change the slide here, but you can see the report on the left. That's a 27-page report. It kind of gave an overview of the market, talked about our methodology, and then it had a 2 or 3 page profile on each of the 5 vendors. And then along with that report comes the companion worksheet, which is the spreadsheet. You can see here the top 2 rows, where we summarized our notes for each vendor for each of the 51 criteria. And we broke that down into 4 different categories of criteria. One was company background, second was company scale, second was product background, and the 4th was product functionality. So we scored company scale and product functionality in the worksheet. So anyway, that's the report. That's what you get. You get the summary, you get the profiles, and you get all the details that we collected and used, which took quite a while to compile. So hopefully it can accelerate your research if you're looking into these types of tools. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. Also like to personally thank Lyndsay for working with me closely on this report. And it was a great experience.
Yeah,
and I hope it's of value to everyone.
I enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the experience, not only working with you personally, but also working with the vendors and learning about the products. It was really valuable.
Yeah, we should give a shout out to the vendors, because they did spend a lot of time with us, and we do appreciate that immensely. They were very patient in educating us and answering our innumerable questions. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.